Santa versus the Galactic Assassin, a Christmas action adventure. There are three constants in the galaxy, or so the ancient records claimed: death, taxes, and the certainty that Christmas would arrive on Earth no matter who tried to stop it. The last civilization foolish enough to challenge that certainty had been wiped from existence so completely that even their name had become a cautionary whisper, a warning in interstellar archives. Far beyond human comprehension, in a chamber carved from living crystal and bathed in the pale violet light of a distant nebula, the Galactic Council convened. The chamber's architecture was impossible, geometries folding back on themselves, angles that made the eyes ache, and ceilings that seemed to stretch into infinity. Alien representatives stood at the edge of floating platforms, their limbs moving in arcs that were both elegant and unsettling, eyes tracking every detail of the discussion with unnerving precision. "The target is symbolic," hissed one voice, low and metallic, vibrating like a machine in resonance with its own vocal cords. "Terminate it! Break human morale, make them weak." Other voices joined, debating minutiae, optimal timing, thermal readings of the target's environment, the probability of success based on historical precedent. One particularly paranoid delegate insisted on multiple contingency fleets, while another suggested psychological warfare campaigns, unaware that all their calculations would be rendered meaningless before the operation even began. In the corner of the chamber, the assassin stood silent, unmoving. Years of perfect execution had made him a shadow in his own right. He had eradicated planetary leaders, toppled governments, and erased entire populations when required. He had never failed. And yet, standing there, watching the Council's arrogance, he could feel the faintest tingle of amusement. "They have no idea," he thought. "They assume this will be trivial." The Council continued their deliberations. The assassin let their words wash over him like static, tuning out the politics while absorbing the technical details. He had a reputation for efficiency and ruthlessness. That reputation, he knew, had preceded him here. Yet none of these creatures understood the one critical factor: humans did not play by predictable rules. Meanwhile, on Earth, something entirely different happened. Warning systems flared with calm precision. Not a single alarm screamed panic, but every operator knew the stakes. The target had been classified: Asset Red 5, Protection Level Maximum. Humans had survived threats far worse than this, and centuries of hard-won experience had taught them one thing: preparedness, adaptability, and observation often mattered more than brute force. The human countermeasure assigned to the mission was a Navy SEAL veteran, drawn from civilian life but still honed by years of combat experience. He was not a hero by inclination. He was a survivor, a man who trusted instinct above protocol, skill above luck. As he reviewed his deployment plan, a memory surfaced unbidden. He remembered a mission in the mountains of Eastern Europe, an ambush that had left half his team dead, communication lines severed, and no escape route in sight. One man had never made it home. That memory was not trauma. It was a lesson. Improvisation and instinct could be the difference between life and death. The lesson would serve him now. He glanced briefly at a photograph tucked inside his pack. A small girl, bright-eyed, laughing in the snow, still believing in the magic of Christmas. That belief was fragile, yet priceless. If Christmas were lost, it would be more than a holiday stolen. It would be hope stripped from the universe, one child at a time. That thought grounded him, sharpened his focus. Far above, the assassin's craft sliced through the auroras of the polar sky. Sleek, silent, lethal, it glided toward Earth like a predator's shadow. Sensors scanned relentlessly, weapons were primed, and every algorithm calculated. Every conceivable contingency had been considered, except one: the humans below. The defenders waiting, patient and unseen. And the red-coated figure whose very existence defied logic. At the North Pole, the workshop lay blanketed under thick snow, quiet but alive. Within, the target moved gracefully, surveying the machinery that hummed softly, almost imperceptibly. Toys, conveyor belts, and sleigh components were more than they appeared. Each device was part of an intricate defense system, designed to respond automatically to threats. Even the most mundane objects, wooden trains, spinning tops, decorative snow globes, had a purpose that only someone with centuries of experience could understand. The target's eyes, sharp behind gold-rimmed spectacles, swept across the workshop, calm, deliberate, patient. He had survived centuries of threats, watched assassins fail, and understood the value of waiting for the perfect moment. He was preparing, yes, but not in the way anyone might expect. This preparation was invisible, subtle, almost artistic in its execution. Every movement was deliberate, every glance a calculation. The SEAL checked his gear one last time, running through contingencies, silently recalling every survival lesson, every misstep, every mission that had nearly ended in failure. A sniper ambush in a city square, a rooftop extraction under enemy fire, the weight of every life in his hands. These memories were not distractions, they were guides. He had learned to trust them. The assassin's sensors flickered over the Arctic ice, confidence unshaken. A mythical figure, he muttered, defended by primitive humans. How quaint. He did not notice the faint hum beneath the snow, the meticulous positioning of the seal, or the pulse of life that had endured centuries. He did not notice the subtle hints of power and intelligence behind every piece of machinery, every conveyor belt, every toy. Outside, the auroras danced across the sky, painting the ice in surreal greens and purples. Winds howled across the Arctic ridges, gnashing snow into walls that could have buried a man alive. Yet inside the workshop, there was only calm, waiting, patient, prepared. The SEAL breathed slowly, methodically, his eyes scanning every possible avenue of approach. The assassin was coming, and he would have to be ready. The first act of the hunt was complete. The pieces were moving. The hunter believed victory was inevitable. But below, silent, unseen, and prepared, the defenders of Christmas waited. And somewhere in the flickering lights of the workshop, the red-coated figure smiled faintly, as if anticipating the chaos to come. The Arctic night was alive in a way that only extreme cold and endless ice could be. Winds tore across the frozen plains with a howl that could slice through steel, carrying snow that glittered under the dancing auroras. Shades of green, purple, and pale blue swirled overhead, painting the ice in spectral light. The landscape was both beautiful and hostile, a perfect hunting ground for the predator who thought himself in control. Above the ice, the assassin's craft descended. Sleek, black, and silent, it slipped through the storm like a knife through silk. His sensors pinged constantly, scanning every ridge, crevasse, and potential threat. He noted faint heat signatures and small electromagnetic disturbances, but dismissed them all. Noise, insignificant anomalies, nothing I cannot handle. He did not know the truth. Every inch of this frozen expanse had been considered and prepared for by someone who had survived threats far beyond imagination. Below, crouched behind a jagged ridge, the SEAL veteran observed the approaching craft with unblinking attention. He adjusted his binoculars, fogged slightly from his breath, and took a measured inhale. His gloved hands moved with the precision of habit, checking sensors and adjusting small devices he had laid along the ridge. These weren't ordinary surveillance tools. They were improvised, cobbled together from standard military issue and clever modifications he had made on the fly. Each device was a silent guardian, monitoring movement, vibrations, and heat. As he prepared, a memory surfaced. Crawling through a jungle in the dead of night, surrounded by enemy patrols, every wrong step potentially lethal. A teammate had whispered something, almost jokingly, that had saved them. That lesson lingered. Patience, improvisation, and observation could save lives when brute force would fail. He applied the same principle here. The assassin might be a master of lethal efficiency, but he was not infallible. The assassin's boots barely disturbed the snow as he approached the facility. Every movement was deliberate, precise, silent. He paused occasionally to adjust sensors, recalibrate his weapons, and reassess the terrain. A faint shift in the snow caught his attention, minor, almost imperceptible. He scanned, finding nothing. Irritation flickered across his face. Wind, or perhaps miscalculation. He ignored it. Confidence surged. An easy kill, a simple target. Yet the SEAL noticed these subtle disturbances. Snow that should have been solid gave way slightly. A shadow moved against the moonlight. Faint patterns in the drift hinted at more than the storm. He smiled faintly under his breath. He thinks he is alone. He is not. A gust of wind ripped across the ridge, carrying snow in a blinding sheet. The assassin froze, sensors pinging minor anomalies he could not interpret. False positives, he muttered. Yet his instincts, honed over years of combat, twitched at the edge of his consciousness. There was something watching, something intelligent. But he pushed the thought aside. Overthinking. Focus. The seal crawled forward, slipping between rocks and ice, leaving barely a trace. He set another sensor low to the ground, camouflaged with snow and shadows. Every movement was calculated. He remembered a firefight in a desert canyon where a single improvisation saved his team from annihilation. That same principle applied here. Adaptability and patience, exploiting the environment to maximum effect. Inside the workshop, the red-coated figure moved calmly. Lights flickered faintly, tiny machines hummed in subtle synchronization, and conveyor belts shifted silently. On the surface, it looked like a normal toy workshop. But nothing in this place was ordinary. Every machine, every toy, every moving part had a purpose, a defense mechanism integrated into centuries of accumulated wisdom. Even the snow outside seemed to respond, subtle shifts, almost imperceptible adjustments that the assassin could not detect, hints of a power he would not recognize until it was too late. The assassin approached the perimeter of the workshop, scanning the reinforced doors, security cameras, and small vents. Confidence remained unshaken. The myths are easy targets, he thought. He did not notice the faint glint of sensors buried in the snow, the tiny pressure plates hidden beneath the surface, or the guardian quadrupeds that watched silently from the ridges. Not ordinary reindeer. They were intelligent, trained, and ready to react with terrifying precision. The seal moved like a shadow, positioning himself on higher ground. He monitored the assassin's progress through his sensor array, anticipating every step, recording movement patterns, and adjusting his own position. Patience was paramount. He knew the assassin's confidence would be his greatest weakness. He recalled a mountain ambush in Eastern Europe, half his team gone, every decision critical. Those lessons were alive in him now, guiding every movement, every breath, every calculation. The auroras above shifted, casting long, dancing shadows on the ice. Snowdrifts became ghostly shapes, hiding small sensors and pressure triggers. The assassin paused, scanning again, sensing the subtle changes in the environment. He muttered to himself, dryly sarcastic, a mythical figure defended by primitive humans. How quaint. He did not notice the faint vibrations in the snow, the synchronized movements of the guardians waiting and hiding, or the subtle hum of hidden machinery inside the workshop. The seal's breath was steady, heart rate measured. He observed, calculated, and waited. Each anomaly in the snow, each odd flicker of light, reinforced his belief. The assassin was confident, precise, but not infallible. And patience, above all else, was their weapon. A faint crunch sounded from the ice near the workshop entrance. The assassin tensed, scanning for movement. There was nothing visible, nothing he could detect. His confidence faltered just slightly. Wind, snow shift. Probably nothing, he muttered. But the seed of doubt had been planted. The seal shifted again, repositioning behind a small outcrop. He tapped a device to relay subtle movement data to a secondary sensor network. Each step of the assassin was tracked, anticipated, every possible angle covered. A sardonic thought crossed his mind. All this effort to kill a man in red, and yet they have no idea who or what they are dealing with. The assassin moved closer, unaware of traps, sensors, and guardians lying in wait. The Arctic storm raged, but it was no longer simply weather. It was part of the battlefield. Snow drifted over sensors. Gusts of wind changed visibility. Shadows lengthened and shifted. Every environmental variable had been subtly anticipated by the seal and the hidden defenders. Then faintly, almost imperceptibly, a movement to his side, a shadow slipping silently across the snow. The assassin froze. Micro-adjustments in his sensors indicated something alive, intelligent, watching. But when he scanned again, nothing was there. He muttered, frustrated, "Damn humans, always hiding, always interfering." The seal allowed himself a small smile, patience, observation, adaptation. The assassin had come expecting an easy kill, a straightforward mission. Every step forward now brought him closer to the prey he had underestimated. To the guardians who were not merely reindeer, and to the red-coated figure who had prepared for centuries. Auroras shimmered overhead, wind shredded the ice, and snow shifted as if alive. The storm was relentless, the landscape treacherous, and the hunter had not yet realized that he was no longer in control. The first engagement was approaching, and when it came, it would be unlike anything he had ever faced. The Arctic night pressed down like a frozen weight, winds shrieking across jagged ridges, carrying snow that glittered eerily under the swirling auroras. Shadows danced over the ice, bending and elongating as if the storm itself had a mind. Above the white expanse, the assassin's craft cut a dark slash through the night sky, silent and precise. He scanned the frozen terrain below with sensors that could detect a heartbeat at 100 meters and a snowflake at a kilometer. Confidence radiated from him. He was certain this would be an easy kill. Beneath the storm, crouched behind a jagged ridge, the SEAL veteran observed him. Snow whipped his face, the cold biting through layers of protective gear, but he barely noticed. His binoculars fogged slightly with breath as he tracked the approaching threat, noting each micro-adjustment the assassin made. Small sensors were embedded in the snow around him, each one a silent guardian feeding data to his own portable interface. He remembered the night in Eastern Europe, the ambush, the frozen mountain, the desperation, and drew on it now. Patience and improvisation would be key. Then came the first hint that this would not be a simple confrontation. A tiny shadow flitted across the snowbank ahead. One moment it was hidden. The next, a small figure vaulted from a drift, landing silently and rolling into position behind a mound. An elf. Not a naive toy maker, but a guerrilla specialist the SEAL had come to call combat elves. The first elf fired a mini crossbow, a single bolt streaking toward the assassin's leg. He twisted instinctively, the bolt embedding harmlessly into a snowdrift. Another elf launched a net from a disguised toy launcher, entangling sensors and momentarily obscuring the assassin's vision. A third hurled a small smoke bomb, and suddenly the storm became worse. Snow whipped around him, a white blur masking movement. The assassin cursed under his breath, frustration threading his voice. Tiny humans with toys. Pathetic. But he did not understand. These were not toys. Each device, each gadget had been designed to disorient and injure, timed and coordinated for maximum effect. They were shadows moving in the storm, unpredictable, lethal, and cunning. From his perch, the SEAL adjusted his own position, crawling silently across the ice. He tapped another sensor into the snow, a pressure plate disguised as a drift, linked to a small flash device that could blind and disorient the assassin momentarily. He'll think it's just more wind and snow, the SEAL thought wryly. Let's see how he likes ghosts in the storm. The assassin pressed on, weaving through the chaos, but each step became increasingly treacherous. The elves' guerrilla tactics forced him to divert attention constantly, micro-adjust his sensors, and second-guess his calculations. One leapt from a hidden tunnel beneath a drift, tossing a tiny electrified snowball that sparked as it struck the ground, temporarily jamming his onboard systems. Another sprinted along the workshop roof, tossing small explosives that detonated in harmless but startling bursts of light and sound. Enough of these theatrics, the assassin muttered, tightening his grip on his rifle. But each moment of frustration gave the SEAL time to observe and plan. Snow shifted subtly underfoot, and the storm, seemingly chaotic, was now part of the battlefield. The environment itself worked against the intruder, a silent ally to the defenders hidden in the snow. From the workshop, faint vibrations rippled through the ice, small, deliberate, mechanical hums. Santa's influence was subtle but present. The machines, conveyor belts, and even the tiniest toys seemed to move in synchronization, responding to threats almost autonomously. The assassin's sensors detected anomalies, but he misread them as environmental noise. He did not yet understand that these anomalies were part of a network of defenses designed to manipulate his every step. Another elf emerged from a drift, spinning a miniature rocket launcher across the assassin's path. The SEAL watched carefully, analyzing how the assassin reacted. He noted his pattern, anticipating overcorrections, predicting where he would step next. The battle was a delicate dance, and the SEAL was both choreographer and observer. The assassin fired a round, narrowly missing a dart launched by an elf from behind a snowbank. "Annoying pests," he muttered. But the elves had already moved again, vanishing into the storm only to reappear in new positions. The storm's chaos, combined with the guerrilla tactics of the elves and the SEAL's calculated interventions, began to wear down his confidence. The auroras above shifted violently, casting long, distorted shadows. Snowdrifts moved, almost as if alive, subtly pushing the assassin into more vulnerable positions. From the distance, the faint outline of something larger moved, a shadow against the snow that did not belong. 4 quadrupeds, massive yet elegant, slinking through the storm with lethal intelligence, the reindeer guardians. The assassin paused. He had anticipated humans, perhaps traps, but not this, not creatures that moved with coordination and purpose, herding him subtly, driving him toward the prepared positions the seal had established. Every instinct screamed danger. Every step forward risked his life. The seal allowed himself a quiet grin, patience, improvisation, adaptation. The assassin had entered a battlefield that was layered, multidimensional, and unpredictable. He had assumed it would be a simple kill. He had not counted on tiny guerrilla elves, a veteran operative, or ancient guardians lying in wait. And somewhere deep in the workshop, the red-coated figure watched, calm, measured, his presence subtly influencing the storm, the snow, and even the auroras. The battle was only beginning, but the first wave of chaos had already been unleashed. The storm howled like a predator's growl, tearing across the Arctic expanse. Snow whipped across ridges, ice cracked under hidden crevasses, and auroras painted the world in ghostly green and violet. The assassin had pressed past the initial defenses, convinced the chaos of the elves was a minor distraction. He was wrong. From the shadows of a high ridge, the first signs of the reindeer guardians emerged. Sleek, muscular, their fur glinting in the auroral light, their eyes shone with a dangerous intelligence. 4 of them moved as one. Each step calculated, synchronized, almost unnervingly precise. Their breath steamed in the frozen air, not from exertion, but from centuries of purpose distilled into instinctive perfection. The assassin froze for a heartbeat, sensors scrambling to detect movement. These were no ordinary animals. He had trained for lethal predators, elite soldiers, even alien combatants, but nothing like this. They were guardians, fast, strategic, and deadly. Then they struck! The largest leapt first, bounding over a snowdrift, hooves barely touching the ground. A second reindeer veered to flank, her body sliding smoothly across ice, forcing the assassin toward the prepared trapline the seal had established. Snow exploded as miniature mines, cleverly disguised as chunks of ice, erupted in front of him. He twisted, rolling to avoid impact, but the coordinated attack began to fray his composure. Elves surged from hidden positions, acting like guerrilla skirmishers. One vaulted from a roof vent, launching electrified darts that sizzled across the assassin's sensors. Another rolled down a slope, tossing small smoke bombs that twisted the blizzard into a white chaos, masking the movements of the reindeer. Every time he tried to focus, the elves were gone, only to reappear moments later in new, unpredictable positions. The seal crouched behind a ridge, directing the flow of the battlefield with subtle gestures and suppressed comms. Each elf's position, each reindeer's movement, was feeding data into his mental map. He anticipated the assassin's reactions, predicting where he would move next, adjusting his traps and exploiting environmental hazards. Snow bridges that could collapse, crevasses that could swallow an unsuspecting foot, icy slopes that could betray a heavy step. The assassin fired, but the shots were wild, disrupted by both the storm and the lightning-quick movements of his attackers. One dart struck a sensor, causing a minor explosion that blinded him momentarily. Another bolt whizzed past his shoulder as a reindeer swept low, hooves skimming the snow, forcing him backward. He snarled in frustration. Tiny humans, ridiculous creatures, and mythological beasts. His arrogance was cracking. A sudden gust hurled snow into his face, obscuring vision completely. Through the white storm, movement appeared, more elves leaping from snowbanks like shadows given flesh, tossing explosive toys, grappling hooks and miniature bolas. He spun in every direction, trying to regain control, but the battlefield had become a labyrinth of chaos, carefully choreographed by the seal and the guardians. One reindeer lunged, hooves striking with precision, sending him staggering backward into a shallow crevasse. He barely caught himself, scrambling to regain footing as elves launched a volley of electrified projectiles. He cursed loudly, voice sharp with disbelief. "This is impossible. I've faced armies before, entire planetary defenses, and I've never seen anything like this." The seal used the chaos to reposition. Sliding down a slope, he placed a sensor beneath a drift. It hummed faintly, almost invisible, and within seconds the assassin's footing faltered as a localized snow collapse triggered. A small avalanche surged forward, enough to force him into a predictable path. Now, the seal thought, the real fun begins. From behind a ridge, the reindeer circled, cutting off escape routes. Their intelligence was staggering. They anticipated, flanked, and nudged him like a predator driving prey into a trap. Meanwhile, the elves flitted from drift to drift, launching gadgets, deploying mini-explosives, and coordinating chaos with near-military precision. "Curse these pests!" the assassin hissed, ducking under an electrified net. Every step now required calculation and luck. The seal's trap layout worked in concert with the elves' guerrilla tactics and the reindeer's controlled aggression. It was a symphony of chaos, each element reinforcing the others. The auroras flared overhead, casting jagged shadows across the ice. Snow shifted beneath the assassin's feet, further complicating his movements. He tried to regain control, firing at any moving shape, but each target he struck seemed to vanish as if the storm itself swallowed them. The elves had become ghostly silhouettes, appearing unpredictably to strike and vanish again. Then, through the swirling white, a shadow detached itself from the blizzard. A massive reindeer, hooves striking ice with force that reverberated through the snow, eyes glowing faintly with calculated malice. It charged with terrifying speed, funneling the assassin toward the final trap line laid by the seal. Snow exploded under its impact, and the assassin barely managed to leap aside as an avalanche of snow and ice surged forward. The seal leaned forward, voice barely audible over the storm. Focus on the flow, predictable chaos. He observed patterns, exploited weaknesses, and adapted instantly as the assassin struggled to process the multiple angles of attack. The guerrilla elves, the reindeer guardians, and the storm itself worked as a single entity. The assassin, once supremely confident, now moved with growing panic. His sensors were compromised, his footing unreliable, and every attack from elves or reindeer forced him into defensive maneuvers. The seal observed, noting mental and physical breakdown patterns, preparing for the final engagement. The battlefield had turned entirely against the hunter. And somewhere deep within the workshop, a faint hum resonated. Machines, conveyor belts, and even tiny toys seemed to shift subtly, responding to the battle. The red-coated figure watched, calm, patient, yet fully aware of the unfolding chaos outside. He did not intervene yet. He allowed his guardians and elves to destabilize the intruder, setting the stage for the arrival of the final piece, Santa himself. The storm raged. The battlefield became a labyrinth of snow, ice, and chaos, and the assassin realized that what he had thought would be a simple mission had become a fight for survival against a symphony of relentless defenders. And in that moment, he understood one terrifying truth. He had underestimated everything. The storm tore across the Arctic night like a living entity, snow lashing the frozen plains, auroras flickering overhead in eerie spectral waves. The assassin staggered through the chaos, battered by the relentless guerrilla attacks of the elves and the precise flanking maneuvers of the reindeer guardians. Confidence, once a palpable aura around him, had been replaced by creeping dread. He had underestimated the defenders, the terrain, and the storm itself. From the shadows of the workshop, a figure moved with a calm, deliberate grace. Red coat, boots black as midnight ice, hands steady, eyes glinting with centuries of experience. Santa, not the jolly caricature from children's stories, but a tactical genius, a master of environment and technology. The storm seemed to bend subtly around him, the aurora light catching just right to cast an almost supernatural glow. He stepped into the open, and the battlefield reacted. Tiny machines in the workshop whirred faintly. Conveyor belts adjusted their speed, and miniature toys along the floor shifted, readying themselves as improvised defenses. The storm seemed to bend subtly to his will. Gusts shifted direction to obscure movement. Snow piled to obscure traps. Auroras flared in warning patterns. The assassin noticed immediately. Sensors pinged anomalies, systems recalibrating uncontrollably. "Impossible," he muttered, his voice tense with disbelief. "It's just tricks. Environmental manipulation, illusions." He didn't yet understand that the man in red commanded centuries of knowledge, ingenuity, and tactical awareness, and that the environment was an extension of his will. Santa didn't rush. He moved deliberately, stepping from shadow to shadow, avoiding hazards not because he needed to, but because he chose to. He raised a hand subtly, and the reindeer guardians pivoted in perfect coordination, cutting off escape routes and driving the assassin toward the seal's prepared traps. The seal crouched behind a ridge, observing. This was no ordinary mission now. This was a coordinated symphony of defenders. Each elf, each reindeer, every environmental hazard was part of a calculated plan, and Santa himself, calm and unhurried, was the conductor. Elves flitted through snowdrifts, leaping, spinning, firing miniature projectiles that hissed and sparked across the ice. One vaulted from a roof vent, launching an electrified dart. Another rolled across the snowbank, tossing a small net that ensnared the assassin's sensors. Chaos erupted around him, but the movements were not random. They were carefully orchestrated, each attack synchronized to destabilize, confuse, and control. Santa raised his hand, and the storm shifted subtly again. A sudden gust forced the assassin to stumble, snow blinding him, as the auroras flickered in sudden brilliance overhead. He tried to recalibrate, to regain control, but every system was disrupted, every route blocked. The battlefield was alive, responsive, and merciless. Then Santa moved. His combat style was deliberate but deadly, a mixture of precise martial skill, strategic placement, and subtle technological augmentation. He disarmed traps before they could trigger against allies, used small gadgets with surgical precision, and manipulated the environment without ever appearing rushed. One motion sent a small avalanche tumbling toward the assassin. Another flick of the wrist redirected a hail of miniature rockets launched by the elves to ensure no one got caught in friendly fire. The assassin swung his rifle, firing at fleeting shadows, but it was futile. The elves' guerrilla tactics, combined with the reindeer guardians and Santa's calculated interventions, forced him into defensive maneuvers. Each attack met with counteraction, each step anticipated. Even the auroras themselves seemed to be working against him, their light reflecting off ice and snow in blinding, disorienting flashes. "Enough of these theatrics, old man!" the assassin shouted, frustration lacing his tone. "I am a master assassin! None survive me!" Santa's response was a quiet, almost playful smile. "Master Assassin, you've underestimated the defenders of Christmas, and the patience of centuries." With that, he stepped closer, and the battlefield shifted subtly around him. Snowdrifts rose slightly, guiding the assassin toward a trap set by the seal, while elves emerged from hidden positions to further disorient him. The reindeer flanked with lethal precision, hooves striking snow and ice in perfect coordination. The seal seized the moment, sliding down a slope to place a sensor beneath a drift, triggering a minor avalanche that nudged the assassin into a predictable path. The guerrilla elves, the reindeer, and Santa himself formed a coordinated network of offense and defense, each element reinforcing the others. The assassin's arrogance began to crack under the relentless assault. His sensors jammed, footing unreliable, every attack countered before it landed. He had expected a simple kill. He had expected an easy mission. Instead, he faced a battlefield that was alive, unpredictable, and orchestrated with a precision that exceeded even his own training. Santa's interventions became more visible. A flick of his wrist sent one of the assassin's advanced drones spinning into a snowbank, while another small gadget knocked a weapon from his hands with near zero effort. His presence alone shifted the battlefield, and yet he moved as if unhurried, almost playful, always in control. The assassin stumbled, cursed, and glanced around in desperation. The elves vaulted from snowdrifts, firing electrified projectiles. The reindeer pinned him from two directions. The seal monitored and adapted, nudging him toward predictable traps. Santa, calm and precise, waited for the perfect opening. "Patience, old man!" the assassin spat. "I am the hunter!" "And I," Santa replied, voice calm but carrying centuries of authority, "am the defender, and today, you are the prey." He shifted subtly, and the auroras flared as if punctuating the statement. The battlefield quaked with movement, snow and ice reacting to his presence in ways the assassin could not comprehend. The assassin realized too late that this was no ordinary mission. Every ally, every guardian, every environmental factor was working against him, and in that moment he understood a terrifying truth. He had walked into a trap so intricate, so overwhelming, that no skill, no technology, no cunning could easily overcome it. The battle was far from over, but with Santa fully engaged, the tide had irrevocably shifted. The Arctic storm had become a living nightmare. Snow screamed across jagged ice ridges, ice sheets groaned under invisible pressures, and auroras cast fractured light across the battlefield. The assassin stumbled through the chaos, sweat freezing on his brow beneath the storm gear, breath ragged, confidence shattered. He had expected a simple kill. Instead, he faced a living trap, a three-dimensional battlefield orchestrated by centuries of preparation. The elves moved like shadows incarnate, leaping from snowbanks, roof vents, and drifting ice mounds. Miniature rockets, electrified darts, and tiny net launchers erupted around him. Each movement was unpredictable, forcing him to split attention between multiple threats. One elf vaulted overhead, launching a grappling hook that snagged a weapon from his hand. Another rolled along a slope, detonating a small smoke bomb that twisted the blizzard into a white tempest. Above, the reindeer struck with lethal precision. One charged from the right, hooves striking the ice to send shards spinning across the assassin's path. Another flanked from the left, nudging him toward the seal's hidden trap line. Their movements were flawless, predatory, synchronized with the elves' guerrilla tactics and Santa's subtle manipulations of the battlefield. Santa himself moved like a calm eye at the center of the storm. Each step, each flick of his wrist shifted the terrain subtly. Snowdrifts rose to block the assassin's line of sight. Conveyor belts in the workshop altered paths of miniature projectile traps, and aurora light occasionally flared to blind and disorient. He disarmed the assassin's gadgets mid-flight, rerouted attacks with precise timing, and coordinated with the seal through subtle signals. A nod here, a hand gesture there. The assassin lunged desperately toward cover, firing wildly, but every action was anticipated. A net launched from an elf struck his arm, an avalanche nudged him into a crevasse, and a reindeer blocked his path with a perfectly timed charge. The seal capitalized on the chaos, sliding down an icy slope to place a small sensor that triggered a localized snow collapse, further restricting his mobility. Desperation began to crack the assassin's composure. His sensors were failing, his footing unreliable, and every attack met a counter he could not predict. He cursed, rage and disbelief mixing with fear. "This is impossible. I've never encountered anything like this." Elves continued their guerrilla tactics, constantly relocating, vanishing into the storm, reappearing in new positions to harass and distract. One threw a miniature smoke bomb into a deep snowbank, causing a cascade of snow and ice to funnel the assassin into the path of a reindeer strike. Another launched electrified darts from a hidden position, causing his gadgets to malfunction. Each attack, though seemingly chaotic, was part of a coordinated pattern, a choreography designed to break him. The seal watched and adapted in real time, repositioning across icy cliffs, sliding under drifted snow, using improvised tools to manipulate the battlefield. He created paths for allies and traps for enemies, exploiting environmental hazards at every turn. Crevasses, ice bridges, and snow-covered slopes became instruments in the battle. The assassin attempted to regain control, firing toward elves that seemed to appear from nowhere. A tiny rocket exploded nearby, sending him sprawling into a drift. A reindeer slammed into the ice behind him, propelling him toward a cluster of miniature explosive devices planted by the seal. Snow erupted around him, ice shards cutting through the air. "Pathetic!" he shouted, rage boiling. "All of you, stand still!" The elves responded with coordinated chaos. Two vaulting from drifts, two more launching nets, another detonating a small smoke bomb that twisted the blizzard into a blinding vortex. The assassin spun, firing, but every shot was anticipated, every movement countered. The reindeer circled, flanking, pushing, driving him into precisely calculated traps. Santa moved through the storm like a calm force of nature. He intercepted attacks mid-air, manipulated environmental hazards, and redirected the assassin's trajectory toward prepared kill zones. A flick of his wrist sent one of the assassin's advanced grenades spiraling into a snowbank, while another device was rerouted to disable his weapon. The auroras flared with uncanny timing, blinding him at critical moments. The battlefield had become a symphony of chaos, each note deliberate. The seal, guerrilla elves, reindeer guardians, and Santa moved in perfect harmony, an overwhelming force of precision and improvisation against a desperate intruder. The assassin tried to adapt, but every attempt was countered, every maneuver anticipated. Snow collapsed underfoot, ice bridges buckled, miniature rockets streaked through the air, nets tangled sensors and limbs, and the auroras above flared violently, casting fractured shadows that disoriented even the most trained eye. Every layer of the battlefield worked against him: environmental hazards, guerrilla elves, intelligent reindeer, and the calm, deadly presence of Santa. The assassin's arrogance had completely eroded. He was exhausted, panicked, and running out of options. The seal noticed the change instantly. He slid down a slope, placing a small device beneath a snowdrift. The avalanche it triggered pushed the assassin into an exposed position, directly in the path of the reindeer flanking maneuver. Santa stepped closer, calm and deliberate. "You underestimated centuries of preparation," he said, voice steady, almost playful, "and you, sir, are in over your head." The assassin scrambled, firing in every direction, but chaos now fully controlled him. The elves leapt, spun, and fired, while the reindeer circled, closing the net. The seal observed, ready to act on any final maneuvers. The battlefield had become an orchestrated trap, every participant playing their role with lethal precision. And somewhere within the storm, hidden in the chaos of falling snow, shifting ice, and flaring auroras, the assassin realized, too late, that he was no longer the hunter. He had become the prey. He had become the prey. The Arctic storm had intensified into a chaotic tempest, snow and ice whipping across the battlefield, auroras flashing violently overhead. The assassin staggered through the blinding blizzard, each step heavier than the last, every breath labored. What had begun as a mission of confidence and precision had devolved into a desperate fight for survival. Every attack he attempted was countered, every path forward blocked by a combination of guerrilla elves, predatory reindeer, and the calm, inexorable presence of Santa himself. The seal watched from a ridge, noting the assassin's faltering movements. His mind raced through tactical possibilities. The initial chaos had been designed to destabilize, but now the assassin's desperation was an advantage. Every erratic motion was predictable. Every misstep could be exploited. Sliding down a slope, he triggered a hidden sensor, causing a section of snow to collapse, forcing the assassin toward a strategically placed trap line. Elves emerged from snowbanks and vents, their guerrilla tactics becoming even more aggressive. One vaulted high, launching electrified darts. Another rolled across the ice, detonating a miniature explosive that threw snow and shards into the assassin's face. A third leapt from adrift, firing a net launcher that tangled his arm and disrupted his aim. Each move was precise, coordinated, and seemingly improvised, but part of a larger plan orchestrated by the seal and Santa. The reindeer guardians circled in perfect synchronization. One charged low, hooves skimming the ice, forcing him backward. Another flanked from the left, nudging him toward a precarious ridge. They anticipated his reactions, cutting off escape routes and subtly driving him into positions where traps and attacks could be executed with maximum effect. The assassin's arrogance had fully eroded. "This is impossible," he hissed, scanning frantically for weaknesses. "I've dealt with planetary armies, elite operatives, and nothing has ever..." He paused as a snow avalanche, triggered by the seal, sent him tumbling toward a hidden crevasse. With a desperate leap, he caught himself on the edge, snow cascading around him. His confidence was gone. Only panic remained. Santa moved deliberately, his presence calm and precise, a stark contrast to the storm's chaos. Each step subtly manipulated the environment. Snowdrifts shifted to funnel the assassin's movements, auroras flared to disorient, and miniature machinery from the workshop responded to his commands with subtle efficiency. He raised a hand, and one of the assassin's advanced drones spiraled out of control, crashing into the snow. "Patience," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Every move counts." The seal slid down to a lower ridge, planting a small device that triggered a cascade of snow, forcing the assassin toward the center of the battlefield where the reindeer and elves awaited. The assassin tried to regain control, firing wildly at fleeting shadows, but each shot was anticipated. Every movement was countered. The battlefield had become a living trap, a three-dimensional network of offense and defense that left him vulnerable at every turn. The elves' guerrilla tactics escalated. They launched electrified darts, mini smoke bombs, and nets, constantly shifting positions to remain unpredictable. One elf leapt from the roof of the workshop, firing a small projectile that disabled a secondary gadget on the assassin's belt. Another emerged from a snow tunnel, detonating a small ice explosive that sent snow cascading into his path. Chaos reigned, but every action was part of a calculated effort to corral him into the final confrontation zone. The reindeer moved with precision, nudging and flanking, cutting off retreat and herding him toward the seal's traps. One slammed hooves against a snowdrift, sending shards of ice into the air, disorienting the assassin. Another blocked a potential escape route, forcing him into a narrow corridor formed naturally by the terrain and artificially by the seal's sensor-triggered collapses. The assassin's panic grew. Every attempt to fight back was met with coordinated counteraction. His weapons jammed from repeated interference, his footing was unstable on shifting snow and ice, and every escape path had been anticipated and neutralized. For the first time he felt fear, a raw, tangible terror that came from realizing he had underestimated centuries of preparation, intelligence, and adaptability. Santa stepped closer, calm and deliberate, his presence commanding yet almost playful. "You have underestimated us," he said. "Every move, every calculation, every strategy. It has led you here to the point where you are most vulnerable." The assassin scrambled, firing wildly, but the seal and elves anticipated him. A net entangled his legs, a miniature explosive forced him to the ground, and the reindeer blocked his remaining routes. He was trapped, cornered, and utterly exposed. The storm roared around him, but it was no longer an equalizing force. It was a weapon in the hands of the defenders, bending every gust of wind, every flake of snow to their advantage. The turning point was absolute. The assassin, once a figure of calculated lethality, now struggled to survive. His confidence destroyed, his systems failing, and his options running out. He was completely at the mercy of the orchestrated force of Santa, the seal, the elves, and the reindeer. The seal moved forward slightly, voice calm but firm. "It's over. You've run out of options." He watched as the assassin's chest heaved, the panic in his eyes evident, the desperation clear. Every element of the battlefield had been exploited, every weakness turned against him, every escape route blocked. Santa smiled faintly, the storm swirling around him like a cloak. "And now," he said, voice steady, "you face the final step." With that, the battlefield shifted subtly again. The remaining paths funneled toward the inner sanctum of the workshop. The final confrontation was at hand. The assassin, cornered and disoriented, finally realized the terrifying truth. He had walked straight into a trap of centuries, orchestrated with precision, patience, and relentless intelligence. The turning point was complete. The hunter had become prey. The inner sanctum of the workshop was a cathedral of chaos restrained by centuries of precision. Conveyor belts hummed softly, gears turned with clockwork efficiency, and tiny gadgets and toys moved of their own accord, waiting for instruction. Outside, the storm still roared, but inside, a deadly calm had settled. Every element, from the smallest elf to the largest reindeer, knew its role, and the battlefield funneled toward this inevitable clash. The assassin stumbled through the final corridor, sensors failing, weapons partially jammed, exhaustion lining his every movement. His arrogance had been stripped away, replaced by a desperate, frantic need to survive. He had underestimated centuries of preparation, intelligence, and cunning, and now he faced the one figure who had orchestrated it all: Santa. Santa stood at the center of the room, calm and unhurried, red coat flicking slightly in the wind from the open doors. His eyes glinted with a mixture of amusement and deadly precision. Every muscle, every motion was controlled. Every movement of the assassin outside this sanctum had been manipulated to bring him here, where he was most vulnerable, most exposed. "You've come a long way," Santa said, voice steady, almost conversational. "But every step has been predictable." The assassin lunged, firing wildly, but Santa's response was fluid, precise, and economical. With a flick of his wrist, a series of miniature gadgets activated. A net launched from the ceiling entangled the assassin's weapon. A small shock device fired from the wall sent a jolt through his systems, and the floor shifted subtly underfoot, throwing off his balance. The assassin cursed, swinging at shadows, attempting desperate maneuvers, but every action was anticipated. Santa moved like a calm storm, precise and unstoppable, redirecting attacks, disarming traps, and exploiting weaknesses with surgical efficiency. From the shadows, the seal and elves handled remaining threats. Tiny explosions, nets, and electrified darts kept the assassin off balance, ensuring he could not escape or gain an advantage. The reindeer positioned themselves at the exits, blocking retreat and creating a controlled kill zone. Every element of the battlefield converged on this final confrontation. The assassin managed to recover partially, swinging a concealed blade toward Santa, who sidestepped effortlessly. With a motion almost too fast to follow, Santa disarmed him completely, redirecting the energy of the attack with a small gadget that amplified force harmlessly but threw him off balance. "Predictable," Santa said quietly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "And now, it ends." The assassin tried a final, desperate gambit, lunging toward a hidden weapon cache, but the seal triggered a pressure sensor, sending a controlled avalanche of small gadgets and snow crashing around him. Electrified darts zipped through the air, nets ensnared his limbs, and the reindeer flanked him, hooves striking precisely, driving him backward. Santa moved in, calm and unrelenting. One hand subtly manipulated the environment, triggering tiny mechanical traps that forced the assassin onto his knees. His weapons were gone, systems disabled, and his confidence shattered. "Every mission has an end," Santa said, voice low and steady, "and yours has arrived." The assassin realized, too late, that he had underestimated everything. The elves' guerrilla tactics, the reindeer's intelligence, the seal's precision, and most of all, Santa's centuries of preparation and mastery. His gaze faltered, and for the first time, he truly understood fear. With a final motion, Santa deactivated the last of the assassin's gadgets, leaving him incapacitated. The reindeer nudged him to the ground, ensuring he could not rise. The elves rolled into position, securing the perimeter and neutralizing any lingering threats. The seal approached, calm but watchful, ready to handle any unexpected resistance. The storm outside still raged, but inside, a perfect lethal calm had returned. The battlefield was cleared, the intruder defeated, and the orchestration of centuries' worth of preparation had reached its conclusion. Santa's eyes softened slightly as he surveyed the room. "Christmas will proceed as planned," he said quietly, almost to himself, "and let this be a lesson to any who would challenge it." The assassin, defeated, realized the full weight of what he had walked into, a trap centuries in the making, orchestrated with intelligence, patience, and unrelenting precision. He had been outmatched, outmaneuvered, and overwhelmed at every turn. The seal allowed himself a small, satisfied smile, leaning against a snow-drifted wall. The elves returned to their stations, silently moving with the efficiency of a trained unit, while the reindeer stood alert, guardians, ever watchful. Santa, calm and deliberate, surveyed the aftermath. The storm outside continued, but within the sanctum, order had been restored. The battle was won, Christmas was safe, and the assassin had learned the hard truth. He had faced not just a man in red, but a master strategist, supported by centuries of preparation, deadly allies, and a battlefield that bent to their command. With that, Santa gave a subtle nod to the seal. The elves scattered to tidy traps and reset the sanctum, while the reindeer returned to their positions by the workshop doors. The intruder remained incapacitated, a testament to the lethal harmony of defenders. The final confrontation had ended. The Arctic storm had begun to soften, though flakes of snow still swirled around the workshop like spectral dancers. Inside, the battle-scarred sanctum bore the marks of chaos. Scattered gadgets, minor dents in icy walls, and a faint haze of smoke from miniature explosions. But the defenders, Santa, the seal, elves, and reindeer, moved with quiet efficiency, restoring order with the precision of a machine fine-tuned over centuries. The assassin lay incapacitated in the snow, nets and gadgets securing him. His breaths were ragged, chest rising and falling rapidly as the weight of failure pressed down. For the first time in his life, he truly felt the consequences of underestimating centuries of preparation, intelligence, and coordination. Every element of the battlefield, elves, reindeer, seal, even the storm itself, had been turned against him. Santa moved calmly through the workshop, surveying the scene. The red coat still vibrant against the icy backdrop, his boots leaving faint impressions in the snow-dusted floor. He checked on the elves, who moved efficiently to reset miniature traps, gather displaced gadgets, and tidy the workshop. Tiny drones hummed as they returned to standby. Toys resumed their programmed positions, and conveyor belts shifted back to normal speed. The seal, crouched on a ridge near the inner sanctum, scanned the surrounding ice. He adjusted sensors one final time, ensuring no residual threats remained. His mind ran through every movement of the battle, every improvisation, every pattern of guerrilla tactics, silently cataloging lessons for future operations. "Impressive," the seal said, voice low, nodding towards Santa. "I've faced my share of hostile environments, but I've never seen coordination like that, not even in real operations." Santa's expression remained calm, almost amused. "Centuries of preparation," he replied quietly. "Patience, observation, and improvisation. The battlefield itself can be an ally if you understand it." His eyes lingered briefly on the incapacitated assassin. "And some lessons are learned the hard way." The elves moved like well-oiled machines, resetting miniature explosive devices, reorganizing snowbank defenses, and checking the reindeer, who now relaxed slightly but remained alert near the exits. Each guardian, small or large, maintained their role even in calm, a testament to centuries of training and instinct. The assassin stirred slightly, groaning as he tried to process the enormity of what had transpired. His arrogance had been stripped away entirely. Every calculated move had been countered, every path forward blocked, and he now faced a realization more chilling than any weapon. He had been outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and overwhelmed by centuries of preparation, teamwork, and cunning. Santa approached, his boots crunching softly on snow, and crouched near the intruder. "Consider this a lesson," he said calmly, "and perhaps a warning. Not all missions are what they seem, and not all adversaries are as predictable as they appear." The seal observed quietly, noting the interplay between Santa, the elves, and the reindeer. Even in the aftermath, every movement was deliberate, a subtle choreography that maintained order and prepared for any unexpected threats. From a snow-dusted ledge, a lone elf peeked out at the storm, assessing whether any new threats approached. The reindeer shifted slightly, hooves crunching, ears twitching. The battlefield was calm, but readiness remained. Centuries of preparation demanded nothing less. Santa straightened, his coat brushing against snow, and surveyed the surrounding landscape. "Christmas will proceed as planned," he said softly, almost to himself. "But the galaxy, the universe, has a way of introducing challenges when least expected." His gaze drifted toward the distant horizon, hinting at new adversaries, unforeseen threats, and the possibility of future missions. The seal allowed himself a faint smile. "I've seen my share of chaos," he murmured, "but nothing quite like this." He looked toward Santa and the elves, recognizing the deadly harmony of centuries of preparation executed flawlessly. The assassin, still secured, looked up, realizing the stark reality. This was not just a man in red, it was centuries of strategy, intelligence, and preparation embodied in a single figure. And he had been defeated not by force alone, but by coordination, cunning, and foresight. As the storm eased outside, the workshop returned to its quiet hum of activity. Gadgets whirred, elves moved with efficiency, reindeer watched silently, and Santa stood at the center, calm, prepared, and ever vigilant. The immediate threat had passed, but the subtle hint in his gaze suggested the universe was far from done testing him. Christmas was safe, the battlefield cleared, and the orchestration of centuries had achieved its purpose. But even as calm settled over the Arctic landscape, there remained an unspoken truth. This victory was only one chapter in an ongoing saga. New challenges would come, new adversaries would rise, and when they did, Santa, the seal, the elves, and the reindeer would be ready. The storm's fading roar became a distant echo, a reminder that the galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and ever full of surprises. And deep within the workshop, the defenders of Christmas prepared quietly, knowing that the next challenge could be just over the horizon. The Arctic storm had finally ebbed, leaving the workshop coated in a pristine layer of snow. Inside, the hum of machinery, the shuffling of elves, and the low murmur of reindeer created a calm, almost serene atmosphere. But beyond the Arctic, across light years of space, a new signal had already triggered alarms. The defeated assassin, despite incapacitation, had transmitted a faint distress signal, one that reached shadowy operatives and alien factions watching the galaxy for opportunities. Santa's sensors, integrated into both the workshop and orbital satellites, had picked up subtle anomalies in communication networks, detecting unusual activity among distant star systems. It was a warning. The mission against Christmas had only been the opening act. Santa, standing amid his elves and the seal, activated a holographic display that flickered to life in the center of the sanctum. A rotating projection of the galaxy shimmered, highlighting clusters of activity, unusual energy spikes, and several ships moving at near light speeds. The seal leaned in, eyes narrowing. They're mobilizing quickly. Whoever sent that assassin, this isn't a lone wolf operation. They've got resources, ships, entire fleets possibly. Santa's expression remained calm, though his eyes glinted with amusement and calculation. "Then we prepare," he said. "Christmas is not just a holiday, it's a galactic institution, and anyone who dares interfere will face consequences." The elves, meanwhile, were in overdrive. Tiny drones whirred around, sorting through weapons, gadgets, and improvised defensive devices. Some elves were already calibrating miniature space-capable weapons, while others adjusted protective shielding around the workshop, ensuring that even orbital-level threats would be mitigated. The reindeer, ever vigilant, moved to orbital docking points, their saddles retrofitted with stealth thrusters and cargo units capable of interstellar flight. Each guardian was prepared to engage in rapid response, whether to intercept intruders or escort critical deliveries across the galaxy. The seal, scanning the galactic display, muttered, "This is bigger than anything I've ever faced, and I thought the Arctic battle was intense." Santa smiled faintly. "The Arctic was a test," he said, voice calm but firm. "The galaxy is the stage, and sometimes a lesson in patience, improvisation, and chaos is required before the real performance begins." Suddenly, an alert blinked red on the display. Multiple ships were converging on the solar system. Their trajectory was precise, coordinated, and unmistakably hostile. The seal's jaw tightened. "They're coming, full force!" Santa's eyes narrowed, and he raised a hand toward the holographic map. "Prepare for deployment," he said. "We fight not just for Earth, not just for Christmas, but for the principle that chaos cannot dictate order. And that includes any alien factions bold enough to think otherwise." The elves clapped into action, reorganizing defensive drones, preparing stealth interceptors, and loading interstellar sleighs with tactical payloads. The reindeer stamped impatiently, ready to launch, their hooves glowing faintly with integrated thrusters. The seal checked weapons and sensors. "You really run Christmas like a galactic military operation, don't you?" Santa chuckled, a low, warm sound that carried centuries of authority. "Discipline, strategy, and a touch of chaos. It's the recipe that keeps this galaxy in order. At least until desserts." Outside, the first of the approaching ships broke through the asteroid belt, sleek and metallic, weapons bristling, sensors glowing. The galaxy had decided to challenge Christmas, and the defenders were ready. The first engagement was imminent. The Arctic had been the proving ground. Now the galaxy itself would witness the mastery of Santa, the seal, the elves, and the reindeer, a coalition of cunning, strategy, and unpredictable chaos, prepared to turn every hostile move into a spectacle of tactical brilliance. Santa glanced at the seal. "Ready?" "Always," the seal replied, voice firm, eyes scanning the holographic battlefield. Santa nodded. "Then let the next act begin." The blackness of space stretched infinitely, studded with distant stars and streaked by the faint glow of the auroras reflected from the Arctic below. Santa's fleet of sleighs, retrofitted with stealth thrusters and armed with compact interstellar weaponry, hovered in formation above the Earth's orbit. The reindeer pawed at their harnesses, thrusters glowing faintly beneath hooves, eyes scanning for incoming threats. The seal stood at the front of the lead sleigh, checking sensors and weapons, the cold vacuum of space pressing against the hull with barely a whisper. "This is insane," he muttered, fingers tightening around a plasma pulse rifle. "I never thought I'd be shooting aliens from Santa's sleighs in orbit." Santa, calm as ever, adjusted a holographic control panel with a flick of his gloved hand. "Perspective is everything," he said. "You'll find chaos tends to obey if you know how to manage it." His eyes scanned the dark horizon where alien ships emerged, sleek and angular, bristling with weapons and approaching at terrifying speed. "First wave," the SEAL said, voice tense. "They're splitting formation, trying to flank us." Santa tapped a command and the sleighs shifted subtly, formation folding into a defensive wedge. The reindeer reacted instantly, weaving between sleighs with near mathematical precision, their thrusters adjusting with each movement. The elves, perched like miniature gunners on the sleigh's edges, readied electrified harpoons, plasma nets, and improvised laser traps. The first alien ships lunged, weapons firing streams of pulsing energy. Santa flicked his wrist, and a small device on each sleigh emitted a blinding flare of light, reflecting and scattering the incoming blasts harmlessly into space. A ripple of miniature shock fields disrupted targeting sensors, causing several alien weapons to overload and backfire spectacularly, illuminating the void with sparks and fragments. One of the sleighs, piloted entirely by a squad of elite elves, vaulted toward an approaching ship, firing electrified grappling harpoons that latched onto the hull. With a twist, the sleigh yanked the alien ship off trajectory, sending it spinning helplessly into a drift of space debris. The SEAL slid along the interior of his sleigh, firing precision pulses at the alien sensors. "This is like every training exercise combined," he muttered, "except the instructors are insane and the vehicles flying sleighs." Santa's eyes twinkled, a faint smirk beneath the beard. "You'll find there's always room for innovation," he said. Another sleigh darted in close to an enemy vessel, launching a barrage of mini-explosives. The ship rocked violently, alarms blaring, and one alien pilot lost control entirely, ejecting into the void only to be caught by a conveniently placed net from a nearby reindeer sleigh. The aliens regrouped, coordinating a counterattack. Beams of energy streaked toward the defenders, but the sleigh formation shifted like a single organism, each move anticipating the enemy's next step. Snow-dusted harnesses glimmered faintly in space, sleighs twisting, reindeer dodging, elves firing, every action choreographed chaos in perfect harmony. A particularly aggressive alien ship attempted a suicide ramming maneuver on the lead sleigh. Santa tapped a control panel and a miniature magnetic pulse device activated, repelling the ship off course and causing it to collide with two others in a spectacular chain reaction. Sparks, debris, and a faintly ridiculous explosion of what appeared to be alien holiday ornaments littered the void. The SEAL couldn't help a brief, incredulous laugh. Do they decorate?" he asked, eyes wide. Santa's calm, amused tone floated through the comm. "Even villains enjoy flair," he said. "Never underestimate the importance of style in warfare." As more alien ships engaged, the sleighs weaved through the chaos with near impossible agility. Electrified nets, plasma pulses, and ingenious gadgets deployed from every corner of the fleet. Reindeer leapt between vessels, dodging energy streams, tripping anti-gravity nets, and occasionally colliding mid-flight with perfect comedic timing that somehow didn't jeopardize the mission. The SEAL, now fully acclimated to the absurdity of the situation, shouted over the roar of energy weapons, "I take it back! This is insane and amazing!" Santa's eyes glimmered with satisfaction. "This is what Christmas looks like when threatened," he said. "And remember, chaos obeys if you know how to dance with it." The first wave of alien ships was repelled, spinning helplessly into the void. The sleighs regrouped, drones hovering, reindeer steady, elves already resetting weapons and gadgets for the next attack. Santa surveyed the battlefield, calm and deliberate, already anticipating the next move of a cunning enemy. But a faint signal blinked on his console. Another wave, faster, coordinated, more dangerous. The galaxy was testing them, pushing boundaries. Santa turned toward the SEAL. "Ready for the next round?" The SEAL tightened his grip on his rifle, eyes scanning the incoming vessels. "Let's make this Christmas unforgettable." Inside the Arctic workshop, the calm hum of machinery had been shattered. Alien boarding ships, sleek and metallic, had pierced the upper atmosphere, deploying small, stealth-capable drones to infiltrate the sanctum. Their mission: sabotage, disable defenses, and possibly capture Santa himself. The elves were ready. Tiny grappling hooks, electrified nets, and miniature pulse cannons were deployed within seconds. The corridors of the workshop, once filled with the soft rhythm of conveyor belts and whirring gears, became a battlefield of shadows and flickering light. Snow dusted the floors where miniature explosives had been planted, and gadgets perched on shelves readied themselves for remote activation. One group of elves, perched on scaffolding above the main workshop floor, dropped electrically charged nets onto a drone squad attempting to breach a supply chute. Sparks flew as circuits shorted out, drones spinning helplessly into walls. Another elf vaulted across conveyor belts, firing a series of plasma darts that disabled sensors on a stealth drone trying to loop around behind Santa's main control panel. In a narrow corridor, an alien operative attempted to force entry, but two elves sprang from hidden compartments, tripping alarms and detonating micro-shock mines beneath the intruder. He yelped as the blast knocked him into the wall, tangled in nets and completely immobilized. The seal, moving alongside Santa, monitored the holographic displays, coordinating defensive measures. "They're trying to split up and target different nodes," he said, voice low. "We need to contain them before they reach the main control hub." Santa nodded, tapping commands on his console. Small turrets emerged from hidden panels, firing synchronized pulses at drones attempting to bypass security. Conveyor belts shifted unpredictably, creating obstacles that funneled intruders into traps designed centuries ago for just such emergencies. From above, a trio of elves launched miniature rockets at a drone squad attempting to climb toward the ceiling vent. The explosion sent drones spinning into snowbanks and workbenches, tangled in cables or smashing harmlessly into stacks of toys. Each move was precise, coordinated, and devastatingly effective. Meanwhile, the alien boarding party struggled to adapt. Their advanced technology was impressive, but the chaotic guerrilla tactics of the elves and the constant environmental manipulation orchestrated by Santa rendered them vulnerable. Corridors shifted, traps triggered, and mini-drones harassed them at every turn, forcing them into defensive postures and preventing coordination. One particularly aggressive alien tried to hack a control console. As his fingers danced over the interface, the panel sparked and overloaded. A net, dropped from above by a nimble elf, snared him mid-action. Snow and debris from a triggered micro-avalanche pinned him further, immobilizing him completely. Reindeer stationed near observation points outside the main doors provided another layer of defense. One kicked a control panel, sending a secondary door crashing down onto a cluster of boarding drones attempting to breach the perimeter. Another nudged a sabotaging alien into a corridor filled with electrified nets, forcing a chaotic retreat. The seal moved with tactical precision, assisting elves in disarming drones, creating choke points, and coordinating counterattacks. He deployed small pulse charges, disabling alien tech, and redirected intruders into the traps Santa had meticulously prepared. Santa, calm amid chaos, surveyed the battlefield. "They're clever," he said softly, almost to himself. "But they've underestimated centuries of preparation and the ingenuity of those who have been guardians of this place." The boarding parties faltered under the relentless, chaotic resistance. Every corridor, every vent, every hidden compartment had become a weapon. Every elf moved like a shadow, striking, disappearing, and reappearing with terrifying precision. The aliens' own technology, designed for efficiency and stealth, became their undoing against the unpredictable guerrilla style of Santa's defenders. Finally, the last drone squad attempted a direct strike at the main control hub. Santa raised a hand, and the entire floor shifted. Conveyor belts redirected, turrets fired synchronized volleys, and micro-grappling hooks entangled the intruders. The drones were disabled or flung into containment zones, the boarding parties neutralized, and the workshop secured. The elves immediately returned to their stations, repairing minor damage and recalibrating defenses. Reindeer stamps echoed through the corridor as they returned to guard positions, thrusters dimmed, eyes vigilant. Santa and the seal assessed the aftermath, calm but ready, knowing that the galaxy's chaos was far from over. "Nicely done," Santa said, voice quiet but proud. Your improvisation and courage have held this place together. The seal nodded, wiping snow from his gear. I've fought in tight quarters before, but nothing quite like this. The way they move, it's like controlled chaos made tactical. Santa's gaze drifted toward the observation windows, eyes tracing the approaching alien fleet in the distance. This is only the beginning, he said softly. The galaxy will test us further, but we are ready. We always have been. The void of space stretched black and endless, dotted with stars and streaked by faint auroral reflections from the Arctic below. Several alien vessels had survived the orbital engagement, damaged but still operational. Sleighs and reindeer moved like a coordinated strike force, weaving through debris, sensors blazing, as Santa and the seal prepared to board the largest enemy ship. Looks bigger than I expected, the seal muttered, gripping a plasma pulse rifle. And judging by the hull, probably full of surprises. Santa's eyes glimmered beneath the brim of his hood. Surprises are often the enemy's undoing, he said, and we excel at exploiting them. He gestured to a sleigh-mounted harpoon cannon. Shall we? The sleigh hurtled forward, reindeer thrusters flaring, the ship closing the distance at impossible speed. The boarding sequence was precise, miniature grappling harpoons attached to the alien hull, thrusters fired in perfect synchronization, and a chain of tensioned ropes guided the defenders toward the airlock. As they clung to the hull, alien defenses activated, plasma turrets swiveled, energy beams flaring to intercept. Santa tapped a panel on the sleigh, releasing a cloud of miniature drones that jammed targeting systems and emitted electromagnetic pulses, frying circuits and sending turrets into short-circuited chaos. The seal slid along the hull, firing precise pulses at remaining threats, neutralizing automated defenses. I've faced boarding parties before, he muttered, but never on the outside of a ship like this. Santa's sleigh made contact with the airlock. With a flick of his wrist, the hatch opened. Reindeer jumped onto the hull beside them, harnesses equipped with magnetic boots, ready to provide additional support. After you, Santa said, voice calm. Inside, the alien vessel was dimly lit, corridors tight and filled with blinking alien machinery. The defenders moved with deliberate speed. The seal led the way, clearing rooms with surgical precision, while elves perched on consoles and scaffolding, firing micropulse weapons and deploying electrified nets. Aliens scrambled to respond. Armed with sleek energy weapons, they fired down narrow corridors, attempting to pin the intruders. But the chaotic, improvisational tactics of Santa's team made them unpredictable. One elf dropped from above, taking out a drone attempting to flank them, while a mini-rocket disrupted sensors in a control room, sending alarms blaring in every corridor. The seal slid along a corridor wall, firing at advancing aliens, then vaulted over a console to avoid a plasma blast. "This is insane," he muttered. "I love it." Santa, moving with calm precision, disarmed a doorway trap and redirected it against the aliens themselves. A plasma beam ricocheted harmlessly off a wall, striking a containment unit and sending sparks cascading across the room. "Controlled chaos," he said softly. "Our specialty." The aliens attempted to regroup, converging toward the bridge. Santa anticipated their movements, using the ship's own corridors against them. Electrified nets and microdrones funneled intruders into choke points, while reindeer mounted on magnetic boots leapt from scaffolding to physically block access, hooves striking with precision. The seal reached the central bridge, firing bursts at alien tech. "Looks like we hit the nerve center," he said. "Shall we?" Santa's fingers danced across the controls, manipulating the alien systems with a subtle interface hack. Lights flickered, alarms echoed, and the alien crew panicked as systems failed around them. A well-aimed pulse from a sleigh-mounted device disabled the remaining energy weapons, leaving them vulnerable. One alien commander attempted a last-ditch assault, lunging at Santa with a concealed blade. Santa sidestepped effortlessly, tripping the intruder into a containment grid rigged with microelectric pulses. Sparks flared, and the alien collapsed, incapacitated. The seal surveyed the bridge, nodding. "I've cleared plenty of rooms, but this takes the cake." Santa smiled faintly. "And yet there are always more challenges ahead," he said. "Always." Outside, the remaining alien vessels retreated, damaged and confused by the coordinated assault. Sleighs and reindeer regrouped, drones hovering in a defensive perimeter. The boarding party had succeeded. The galaxy's first wave of serious threats had been neutralized, without a single casualty among Santa's defenders. Santa tapped a panel, initiating automated repairs to the vessel's hull and systems. "Order restored," he said softly, "but vigilance must remain." The seal exhaled, adrenaline slowly fading. "I think I need a drink, or 20. Santa chuckled, voice calm, warm despite the chaos. "Patience, there is always time for that. After Christmas." The vacuum of space outside the Arctic had become a chaotic ballet of sleighs, reindeer, and alien vessels. Laser blasts streaked across the void, sparks and fragments drifting like cosmic snow. Amid this high-stakes battle, subtle but deadly moments of absurdity played out with lethal precision. One elf, perched precariously on the side of a sleigh, launched a mini plasma pie at an approaching drone. The projectile struck with a soft splat, briefly coating the drone in molten glowing goo. The drone's sensors shorted, spinning it helplessly into a nearby alien vessel. "Did that just cook it?" the seal muttered, blinking in disbelief as he adjusted his rifle. Santa, calm and almost amused, replied over comms, "It's called improvisation, my dear operative. Never underestimate a well-aimed snack." Meanwhile, a reindeer named Blitzen executed a gravity-defying leap, vaulting from one sleigh to another. Its harness had been fitted with retractable claws, allowing it to snag a rogue drone and fling it like a projectile toward an alien frigate. Sparks flew as the drone collided, causing a minor chain reaction that sent panels flying. Another elf activated a small singing bomb, a device that emitted horrifically off-key holiday carols, amplified to disorient enemy systems. Alien sensors and drones faltered, unable to process the sheer auditory chaos. One particularly uptight alien engineer clutched his head and screamed, It's attacking our minds!" before being gently tripped into a containment net by a giggling elf. The seal, sliding along a sleigh hull, shook his head. "I thought I'd seen everything in combat. I was wrong. Completely wrong." Santa, perched on a sled just ahead, released a volley of miniature EMP snowballs. They streaked through the void, colliding with drones and vessels, short-circuiting systems while leaving tiny, glowing scorch marks that resembled festive ornaments. "Festive, yes," Santa said dryly, "and effective. 2 birds with 1 stone." From the command sleigh, an elf deployed a series of mini grappling hooks, attaching them to alien vessels and spinning them into awkward, uncontrollable rotations. One alien ship, trapped and whirling, collided gently with another, creating a domino effect of chaos and minor explosions, each punctuated by a perfectly timed jingling bell from the elves' toolkit. A rogue drone attempted a kamikaze dive toward the lead sleigh. Blitzen, with a dramatic flick of its head, kicked it back into the void, causing it to spiral like a drunken comet before colliding with a holographic display of Santa's galactic map. Did that just happen?" the seal gasped. Santa adjusted his glasses, still calm amid the absurdity. "Controlled chaos," he said. "Sometimes the most improbable solutions are the most effective." As the alien fleet attempted a coordinated strike, miniature drones, electrified nets, and cleverly timed sleigh maneuvers created a spectacle that was simultaneously lethal and ridiculous. One alien pilot found themselves trapped in a loop of zero-gravity flips, gently nudged by an elf wielding a magnetized candy cane. "Consider this, a lesson in humility," Santa's voice crackled over comms. Even the larger reindeer contributed to the chaos. Donner, using retrofitted thrusters, executed a spinning charge that knocked 2 enemy drones into a nearby asteroid. Rudolph, horns glowing faintly with navigational energy, grazed another ship, causing its course to deviate into a low-orbit debris field. The seal couldn't suppress a grin. "I've been shot at, blown up, and chased across half the world, but this might be the craziest mission of my life." Santa tilted his head, smirking. Every mission should be memorable and lethal, preferably both. As the subscene drew to a close, the alien fleet, now disoriented, damaged, and humiliated by a combination of skill, improvisation, and sheer absurdity, began retreating. Sleighs regrouped, reindeer panting but vigilant, and elves reset gadgets with practiced efficiency. The galaxy had witnessed a battle that combined lethal action and ingenious, darkly comedic improvisation, a hallmark of Santa's centuries-long defensive strategy. The seal took a moment to catch his breath, observing the spectacle. I can't decide if I'm impressed or terrified, or both. Santa chuckled softly, eyes scanning the horizon. Impressed, terrified, it's all part of the experience. And remember, never underestimate the power of creativity, timing, and holiday spirit in warfare. The vacuum of space was quiet again, save for distant sparks and debris slowly drifting in orbit. The defenders had won this round, but the galaxy remained vast, unpredictable, and full of new challenges. And Santa, the seal, elves, and reindeer were ready for whatever absurd and deadly twist came next. The alien fleet, battered and disoriented from earlier chaos, attempted a desperate regroup. Sleek vessels spun awkwardly through the void, some colliding with debris or one another, systems sparking. But the threat remained real. Any surviving ships could still strike Earth or sabotage the Arctic workshop. Santa's command sleigh cut through the darkness, reindeer thrusters blazing, while the seal and elves prepared the final strike. "They're trying to escape," the seal muttered, eyes scanning the fleet. "But they won't get far." Santa's calm, confident tone answered him. "No mission ends without proper closure. Prepare the final gambit." From hidden compartments, elves launched synchronized volleys of micro-drones and electrified nets. Sleigh-mounted pulse cannons fired in perfect arcs, disabling thrusters and weapon systems across multiple vessels. Alien pilots scrambled to respond, only to find corridors blocked by reindeer expertly maneuvering through space, using magnetic boots to herd enemy ships into predetermined paths. The seal led a boarding team to intercept a final wave of enemy ships. Each vessel was already weakened by earlier encounters, and with precise timing, the team deployed grappling hooks and miniature EMP charges. Doors jammed, systems fried, and the aliens, for the first time, realized they had been outmatched not by brute force alone, but by coordinated ingenuity. One particularly aggressive vessel tried a last-ditch kamikaze maneuver, racing toward the Arctic. Santa tapped a control panel, releasing a network of magnetic anchors and micro-drones that caught the ship mid-flight. It spun helplessly, careening off into the void, leaving a trail of sparks and fragments like a twisted comet. Another alien ship attempted a stealth approach from behind. Rudolph, glowing horn cutting through darkness, and Blitzen, thrusters flaring, intercepted, bumping the vessel off course and into an asteroid field. Tiny explosions followed as the alien crew struggled to regain control. The seal marveled at the choreography. "I've never seen anything like this. Even the best special operations units wouldn't pull it off this smoothly." Santa, ever calm, gestured to the remaining vessels. "Smoothness is one thing," he said. "Anticipation and improvisation another. Observe and learn." The final wave faltered, alien pilots trapped in loops of controlled chaos. Electrified nets, micro-drones, and well-timed sleigh maneuvers funneled ships into neutralization zones. Tiny explosive charges disabled weapons without destroying hulls, leaving the fleet incapacitated but intact. A practical, surgical victory. The elves cheered quietly, returning to their stations to repair gadgets and recalibrate defenses. Reindeer stamps echoed through the vacuum as they returned to guard positions, hooves striking the hull with rhythmic precision. The seal holstered his rifle, scanning the perimeter for any remaining threats. None appeared. Santa hovered over the command panel, surveying the battlefield. "Galactic stability restored. For now," he said softly. "But remember, vigilance is eternal. Chaos may take many forms, but preparation and ingenuity remain steadfast." The alien fleet, now incapacitated and retreating, became a constellation of drifting wrecks, a testament to the defenders' skill, improvisation, and relentless coordination. The Arctic workshop, orbital perimeter, and Earth below were safe. For now. The seal let out a slow breath, tension easing from his shoulders. "I think we actually did it." Santa's eyes twinkled faintly beneath the hood. "We did. But the galaxy is vast and challenges are eternal. Today we celebrate the victory. Tomorrow, who knows? Outside, the void shimmered as distant stars reflected off drifting wreckage, a silent applause for the coalition of elves, reindeer, seal, and Santa himself. A battle had been fought and won, cleverness and coordination prevailing over raw force, with humor and ingenuity keeping chaos firmly in check. As sleighs regrouped and drones returned to standby, Santa glanced toward Earth. A faint aurora glimmered over the Arctic horizon, a reminder that Christmas and the defense of it would continue, no matter the threats that arose. The Arctic sky shimmered with faint auroras, reflecting off pristine snow as the storm finally abated. The workshop, though still scarred from the chaos, had returned to a semblance of order. Conveyor belts hummed softly, toys resumed their programmed positions, and the faint glow of warm lights spilled across icy walls. Santa surveyed the scene, calm and authoritative, yet with a rare softness in his eyes. The elves moved efficiently, repairing minor damage, recalibrating gadgets and tidying the aftermath of the battle. Reindeer stood at attention, their thrusters dimmed, eyes vigilant but relaxed. Even in victory, the guardians of Christmas maintained readiness. The seal leaned against a wall, wiping soot and snow from his gear, taking in the aftermath. "I still can't believe what just happened," he muttered. "I've been in hostile territory, faced death multiple times, but fighting aliens alongside Santa and flying reindeer? That's next level insane." Santa chuckled softly. Insane, perhaps, effective, certainly, and memorable, if nothing else. He gestured toward the elves, who were already laughing quietly over some particularly absurd moments from the battle. Creativity, coordination, and a touch of chaos. That is how the galaxy is defended, and that includes Christmas. One elf bounded forward, handing the seal a steaming mug of cocoa. "You earned this," the elf said. "Although, fair warning, we may add a little experimental ingredient. Don't worry, it's safe. Mostly." The seal raised an eyebrow, taking the mug cautiously. "I'll take my chances," he said, smiling despite the fatigue and adrenaline still coursing through him. Outside, the reindeer pawed gently at the snow, some flicking tiny sparks from their thrusters playfully, as if celebrating in their own way. Blitzen nudged a smaller sleigh forward, while Rudolph's glowing horn traced patterns in the sky, reflecting faintly on ice-crusted windows. The battlefield of the galaxy had been won, but the joy of the season remained untouched. Santa moved to the control console, reviewing the status of Earth, the workshop, and orbital perimeters. "All threats neutralized for now," he said, "but vigilance is eternal. Chaos never sleeps, and neither do we entirely." The seal chuckled. "You know, in my line of work, that's usually the scariest thing to hear. But somehow here, it feels reassuring." A faint beep echoed from the communication panel. Santa glanced at it, eyebrow raised. A simple signal, encrypted but unmistakable, hinted at distant activity in another sector of the galaxy. Santa smiled faintly, eyes twinkling with the wisdom of centuries. "Ah," he said softly, "the universe never truly rests, but tonight, we celebrate." The elves clapped, some throwing harmless, glittering sparks in the air, while the reindeer stamped playfully. The seal shook his head in disbelief, taking a tentative sip of his cocoa, still processing the surreal combination of combat, chaos, and holiday cheer. Santa turned to him, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "You've done well, operative. Few outsiders survive a day in this environment and walk away with their sanity intact. Consider yourself part of the Christmas defense team, at least temporarily." The seal smirked, raising his mug. "I'll drink to that, though I might need a few more seasons to fully recover." Laughter echoed through the workshop, a mixture of relief, pride, and festivity. The Arctic night stretched on, calm and still, but with a faint, lingering energy, an unspoken promise that vigilance, ingenuity, and holiday spirit would endure. As the camera of narration, or the listener's imagination, pulls back, the snow glimmers, the aurora dances above, and the galaxy beyond remains vast, unpredictable, and full of future challenges. But in this moment, Christmas was safe. The defenders triumphant, and the absurd, chaotic, and deadly dance of the season had concluded, for now. And somewhere in the void a faint jingle echoed, reminding all who might dare test Christmas again. Chaos obeys, but cleverness and holiday spirit always win.